All right, it is time to head back from work. It's Wednesday, October 30th, almost Halloween, which is cool. Yeah, it was a good day. It's real crappy outside, though. Good thing I work inside all day. But yeah, good day. I had mentioned a couple weeks ago now that I got assigned this project to lead. So because I went on vacation last week, I missed the very first sync meeting I'm supposed to run for it, which is like terrible timing. But I had someone from my team kind of step in, which I'm super thankful for. We kind of acknowledged in the beginning of kicking off this project, it's going to be a little bit rough. Like, we got to get in the groove. But already, not because I'm back, I think just because they've already gone through one sync meeting and then we had today. But today it was already feeling significantly better. So that's good. So I'm feeling positive about that. And I think it's only going to be better for momentum. So it's good stuff. Okay. This morning, I had mentioned that a couple people had contacted me about topics they wanted me to talk through, so this is just another friendly reminder. Maybe I'll start these videos off by reminding people, like, if you have topics that you'd like me to talk about that are related to software engineering, not just anything, I guess, maybe, who cares? Maybe I can talk about other stuff. But let me know. You can put it in the comments, or if you follow me on different social platforms, just message me and I'll see if I can think about a topic or a fit for it. Yeah, just let me know. But one of them that came up was that someone wanted to talk about sort of managing / guiding engineers that are kind of like stuck in their level, and especially like layering on this complication that they might be getting signals from other individuals or other parts of the organization that they're doing a good job. So because this is essentially anonymous, like, I don't even have enough details to identify individuals. So I'm going to talk more specifically about the example if I can recall it correctly. My apologies if I end up missing some of the details that you thought were important in this, but my understanding of the situation, there's a couple unique things going on. Is one, if I understood correctly, this individual is almost like a floating engineering manager, which I think is a very interesting type of role. My personal opinion on that alone is that I don't think that sets you up for success very well. And I don't mean to suggest that someone that, the person that sent me this message, I'm not trying to say that I don't think they can do their job well. I mean that situation, I don't think sets you up for success. And what I mean by that is that if you are floating and you don't have individuals assigned to you as direct reports, I don't know the period that you are working with individuals and building up that trust and respect and like that relationship, because that makes a huge difference in terms of your ability to be successful. So number one, I think that's just an interesting challenge to layer on here. But the other part that I thought was really interesting about this scenario is that when there's different signals from the business, the organization, or other stakeholders that lead this individual to believe that they're doing the right things. So ultimately, engineering managers are going to be the ones that are trying to help ensure that their employees are able to get promoted, receive proper rewards and things like that. Like, that's one of the responsibilities in general of an engineering manager, is to help support the individuals on their team for that type of growth. So it's one of the reasons why I suggest, like, if you're not having conversations with your engineering manager about career growth and things like that, like, that's a really big missed opportunity. And if that's something that your engineering manager is like constantly avoiding for some reason, like, to me, that's a huge red flag. Like, I think that's an expectation that engineering managers should have that they're routinely having conversations like that. So the point of me saying that is that, like, your engineering manager is going to be the one that is giving you the guidance around their expectations for how to grow in your career. So number one, if that's not happening, like, try to have conversations about making sure that happens. And number two, if it is happening and then someone's just blatantly ignoring it, like, I would say that they should not be surprised if they're finding that they're not growing in their career. So this example, the question, or, like, the context was about, like, individuals kind of stagnating, right? They're at a level, whatever it happens to be. Let's assume for this conversation, someone's at a mid-level going for senior engineer, right? I'm just trying to be a little bit more generic here. So they're not super junior, and they're also not, like, they haven't been programming for like 400 years and they're, like, distinguished engineer. So we're kind of just in the middle, which is probably the bulk of engineers, right? So if you have an individual that is in this position and they're stagnating, to me, this, like, the framing here is that there likely is not alignment with their engineering manager. So why that's the case, we can dig into that, because it could be the individual's fault, it could be the engineering manager's fault, it could be both. And I probably shouldn't say fault, but I mean, like, some responsibility played by which party here, right? So there's some lack of alignment, and the reason that that's a problem here is because, like I said, the engineering manager is going to be the one that's putting the person up for promotion. And if they're finding that that individual is not making the progress that they've been trying to articulate to them, then that person's not going to progress in their career in that position. That doesn't mean that, I got to move over here. That doesn't mean that going elsewhere they won't, or it doesn't mean that they're like a bad engineer, but it does mean in that position, they're going to feel like they're stalled. And no one wants that. Like, the individual obviously doesn't want that. And an engineering manager doesn't want that for any employee they have. Like, they want their employees to be able to grow and be successful. So, sorry, I got to switch lanes. So it's not about, like, an engineering manager just trying to gatekeep, a promotion and, like, haha, like, I'll never promote you. It's quite the opposite. Engineering managers want to promote. They want to see their employees be successful. So we have the scenario where an engineer is stalled. And this is, if I understood correctly, and maybe I missed this, I don't know if the engineer feels like they're stalled, because this is an interesting dynamic, and we'll talk about both, let's say. So maybe the engineer feels like they're stalled and they're getting feedback from other parts of the business that they're doing a really good job. So the detail on the good job part was that this person is able to make progress on tickets. They were defined as a ticket machine. So they're able to fix bugs and get things done. And to them, there's a positive feedback loop happening because look how much stuff I'm getting done. But if we take the other perspective too, like, what could be happening is maybe the engineer doesn't even think that maybe they think that they're progressing at a totally okay pace and they're not even concerned about it, but their engineering manager is going, hey, like, this person should be concerned. Like, they are stalled and they don't know it yet. So I don't know the detail there. Regardless, the engineering manager believes that this engineer is stalled because they're not aligning with what they want to be seen. Okay. So the reason, or the information that was provided to me at least, is from the engineering manager. They're perceiving that the individual, the engineer, is focused sort of on the wrong things. So, for example, they're I'm trying to remember some of the details here. Like they're not making like informed engineering decisions. They're kind of just like either taking a lot of shortcuts, or they're just kind of doing like busy work, but not really important things. There was something else that this individual brought up, and I don't want to pull up my phone, even though I'm parked in traffic. If I come to a dead stop, I'll check, but might have to come back to that. But the point is that there are expectations of this engineer that they're not meeting from their engineering manager. So this is a very wordy way of me saying this individual has positive input from other stakeholders. For example, look at all the tickets you're doing, good job. But from their engineering manager, they're focused on the wrong things. So how do you go navigate this? I have seen this type of thing happen before, but the difference that I would say is that the engineering manager, I also feel like, was out of touch. So there were other people, like other stakeholders. A lot of them were like, what the hell is happening here? Like, why is all this stuff getting derailed? Blah, blah, blah. And then the engineering manager was kind of complacent. And then there were product owners kind of like that were also pushovers. So you had a lot of complacency around this individual, and it allowed them to, not on purpose, but it caused a lot of havoc. And then when it came time for like promotion discussions, it was like, look how much work this person does. And other people were like, yeah, but like, do you realize how incredibly disruptive this is? Like, it's not something we want to have emulated. It's a very big problem. So the difference in my example is that I feel like the engineering manager in particular was not taking responsibility. And because they were being very complacent, it meant that they were kind of sitting back going like, look how many tickets get done. Look how much code gets touched. And like, that's not a good metric for progression. So in this case, it sounds like the engineering manager actually really cares. Now, I want to look at this from a couple of angles, and I would say, I don't know this engineering manager, and I want to assume the best, but we need to kind of look at both sides here, because I think that's only fair. So I want to start by saying, we want to assume the engineering manager is doing the right things here, but truthfully, like, what do the conversations look like with the individual? So we want to make sure that we have concrete examples to share with the individual about the expected behavior, and they need to be timely. Because, for example, if you do a performance review, and that's once a year, right? And then you tell this individual, hey, by the way, like, it seems like you're not focused on the right priority work, or it feels like you're not doing like what we would consider like quality engineering practices. Like, you're kind of focused on details that don't really matter, or you're neglecting things. Like, feedback like that, when it's not timely and not specific, is completely ridiculous. I know this sounds exaggerated, so I'm not trying to like pick on this person, right? I want to be helpful here, but I'm putting it this way because it truthfully needs to be very timely and specific, because what's happening is that they're getting positive reinforcement from other areas. So if they're getting that positive reinforcement regularly and it's timely, they're going to keep leaning into that. So as the engineering manager, like, hopefully you're doing one-on-ones, hopefully something like weekly, maybe it's bi-weekly. But if you're noticing these patterns where you're like, hey, this scenario just happened, like, you don't even wait for your one-on-one. You could have a conversation with someone and just say, hey, like, this work got pushed through, but it looks like we didn't have a design for it. Like, it looks like that ended up getting rushed through. Like, can you walk me through what happened here? And you're absolutely able to give this person the benefit of the doubt, right? Maybe you missed something. Maybe this engineering manager is missing some of these conversations happening. who am I to say? So giving this person the opportunity to talk through it, hear their perspective, and if that's still not aligned with what you value as the engineering manager and what you're trying to have your engineers push for, have a conversation about that, right? And it's one of the reasons earlier I said, like, I feel like you're not set up for success if you're a floating engineering manager that rotates through people and teams, is like, when you need to have a hard conversation with someone about this stuff, it makes it really damn hard to have a conversation and not have someone get defensive. People have probably heard about radical candor. I really like the concept. I think that some people think it's easy to achieve, and I think for the people that think it's easy to achieve, it's more likely that you're just an asshole. And otherwise, it's difficult to achieve because it takes a lot of time and effort to build up that trust and respect so that you can be direct with people and tell them what they need to hear. It's the kind of thing that you would want to hear from your best friend because you need to hear it, not because you want to hear it. And that's, like, in my opinion, what you want to strive for as an engineering manager, is to have radical candor so that when people are off track, you can have a conversation and be like, look, Johnny, like, I want to talk through this because what I observed is not something that I think is a good practice that we want to strive for. I want to hear your side of it, talk through it, and then give them what you're hoping to see going forward, and that you can be direct about it. Because if you end up having to be wishy-washy because you're like, man, this person's just completely defensive immediately, you're not going to get anywhere. So I don't know if this engineering manager is in a position where they can have direct conversations like that. I don't know if they're in a position where they can do them timely and specific, because I think that those things are important. So that's one part, right? Like, I don't know if that's happening. I think it needs to be happening if it's not. Another thing is, like, it should be documented, because it's something that if it happens again, you can say, hey, remember that we talked about this? This is the same type of thing, or it's a similar thing. We talked about, and we left the conversation being aligned on it. We agreed that this is an understanding between us, that this is how we want to see, work being delivered, or the depth of, or the focus that we have in our design docs, whatever it happens to be. It's not for me to to dictate other engineering orgs. So you want to have it documented so you have something to refer to. Because if it keeps happening, you still have this evidence that's mounting that's like, look, like, we got a problem here. There's a lot of directions I want to take this, by the way. So, and as I'm trying to figure out which way I want to go, I'm looking at the amount of traffic. It says I'm going to get home at 7 o'clock. And I'm not enthused about that because I have more connects to do for work. And they take me a couple of hours each. So the documenting parts, I think, is important. I think the conversations being timely and specific is important. Something else to try and navigate that I think is really important is these other channels where if someone is getting positive reinforcement from other stakeholders, is to think about those working relationships that you have with those stakeholders and see if there's a way that they're not positively reinforcing the wrong behavior. So in the example that I was giving from some of my experience, when I observed complacency, is that, like, it was basically like trying to enlighten the engineering manager or the product owners, like, what you're observing is actually harmful to other parts of the org. And it's almost like there wasn't awareness. So we needed to let them know, like, in my opinion, the manager's manager probably should have been having conversations with the manager about this, but we needed to let them know, like, framing it in a better way than what I'm about to say, but like, your complacency with this person is causing problems elsewhere. And kind of, like I said, bringing awareness to them that like the type of behavior that they're either rewarding or just being complacent about needs to look different. We need other behavior emulated by people at this level. So that's one sort of tactic or direction you can go with this, is like, it's not a matter of like crapping on the person and saying like, hey, like, you know, Johnny that you're always talking with and saying like, good job on all the work they're doing. Like, no, we hate Johnny. Like, it's not like that. But you have to think about this situationally. So if Johnny in this example is, sorry if your name's Johnny, I'm not trying to pick on you. If Johnny in this example is like, they're the ticket machine and they keep having a product owner or tech support or someone being like, hey, like, yeah, keep getting these work items done, like, so good. Is like letting that stakeholder know, like, hey, by the way, like, it seems like you're the one doing the prioritization work for Johnny. Like, we actually have a bit of a process on our team, or we do something where we're trying to make sure the work is split up properly. And you could, in the example that I'm thinking through with the complacency thing, was we needed to let them, like, we could tell the engineering manager that you can structure this in a positive way. So if we think about a different example, I've seen engineers get stuck, or I shouldn't say stuck, that's too exaggerated. I've seen engineers in their position feel like they're not making the progress they want and they're doing a lot of work. And then we go, yeah, but you're doing a lot of low impact work and it's not adding up the way that you think it is. And even if they're like, their heart's in the right place, they're like trying to do the right thing, what's not happening, especially if they're more and more senior, is they're not working on big impactful work. They're working on stuff that they can get more volume of, like small tickets done, that maybe more junior people on the team could be spending time doing, while they're working on bigger, more important things. I shouldn't say more important, that's a kind of a crappy way to put it, but bigger, more impactful things that need their expertise at their level. Yeah, more important, poor choice. More aligned to their level, I guess is how I should phrase that. Oh man, there's so much traffic and I have to keep moving over lanes here. Please let me in. Okay, one more to go. This guy doesn't have his lights on because he's an absolute moron. That happens a lot here. There's a lot of people that drive without their lights on, and it boggles my mind. I should have went again. This guy also doesn't have his lights on. It's a wall of black darkness just approaching. It's so dangerous. I can't comprehend how people do this. Okay, we're in the fast lane, one of them, but it's also a parking lot. So let me get back on track here. So finding ways that you can talk to these other stakeholders and, like, again, situationally letting them know that some of the direction that they're providing is actually causing some challenges. I say you have to approach this situationally because there's so many different circumstances in how you want to approach this, but the goal is that you're not trying to, like, talk poorly about someone behind their back, because as an engineering manager, like I said, you're trying to help this person grow. You're trying to help them do the right thing. So it's not a matter of, like, stop enabling this person to be bad. Like, that's not the conversation you're having. But it's like finding ways that you can constructively let other people know, like, hey, like, I'm trying to help this person, level up in their role, and I need to try and help them prioritize some larger scale work items. Like, I'm really trying to make sure they can spend some time doing architecture, design documents, and things like that. I'm just making this up for this example. So I know that they've been really helpful, like getting some work done for you, but I need to kind of get things back on track for their career development. So if you're finding that you have requests coming in and you want to direct them to this person because they've been your go-getter, like I think we need to have a conversation about that so I can help prioritize more effectively for them. As an example, right? I'm just making shit up as I'm talking here, but I think approaching other stakeholders to try and like mitigate some of that positive reinforcement that shouldn't be happening is helpful. So talked about a couple things here so far. One is like timely, specific responses. The other one is making sure that you can talk to other stakeholders that might be influencing this. But like, I think, I don't know a good way to put this, but like, I'd be really curious what's happening in the one-on-ones with this individual. And the reason I'm kind of thinking through this is like, I want to assume that everyone's doing sort of the right thing. They're doing the best effort thing that they can. So I want to assume that the engineering manager is having conversations about this. I want to assume that the engineer is being receptive to these things. But I feel like when this happens, it's because there's a bit of a breakdown in what's going on. So if these conversations are happening, like, is the engineer checked out during the one-on-one conversations? Is the engineering manager, do they think that they're conveying this information clearly? But that's not actually happening. Like the person is perceiving what the manager's saying in a different way. Like, hey, that would be a nice thing to do, but it's not really that important. Like, do they understand the impact of this? I don't know the answer to these things, but it makes me curious about, oh my God, so dangerous. Someone just pulled out into the the fast lane's 2 lanes. Someone just pulled out over the quadruple line, which is technically illegal to do. And the person beside me had to slam on their brakes and hold their horn down to let that idiot know that they're an idiot. The person behind me now is driving without lights on. So to give you an example, if it's not totally clear why this is so dangerous, if I'm looking ahead of me and someone slams on their brakes and I go, oh crap, I need to do the same thing. Usually you want to slam on your brakes, but you want to make sure the person behind you isn't totally going to rear end you and annihilate you. I literally can't see anything behind me because there's a black wall of nothingness. So if I am trying to make sure that it's truly safe for me to hit the brakes, literally no idea. If that person decides to switch lanes without putting a signal on, I'll have no idea. It's so dangerous. It's crazy. I just wish that I could take the camera and show you how it looks like there's a void behind me. It makes it look like there's no cars at all behind me, but it's because there's one car blocking all of the light. It's crazy. Anyway. Okay, so let's see if we can come up with more feedback in this situation, right? So again, we have an engineer. They're not really getting traction to level up and kind of feels like they're stagnating. Whether or not the engineer recognizes this or not, maybe something else to talk through. And this looks different at different companies. At Microsoft, we have, I should say, in the organization that I'm in within Microsoft, I can't speak for the whole company, we have what are called talent guides. And a talent guide for us is just a rubric, and it breaks down by level the expectations. So this is a good alignment mechanism for both the engineering manager and the engineer. So to give you an example, something I didn't really talk about is like, and I try to play devil's advocate a little bit so we can hear, or we can think about both sides of this, because I think it's helpful to have just different perspectives on these things. do we actually know that the engineering manager is being justifiable in their expectations? And what I mean by that is like, is it just I'm saying this and I truly don't believe it, but I need to say it, right? Like, is it just a really subjective thing and they're actually a little bit out of line with their expectations? If you have something like a talent guide or a rubric that helps align the expectations across that role for the different levels, it makes it less subjective so that that engineering manager can say, like, this is the established expectation for your role at this level, right? And they have something concrete to refer to. And that way it removes some of that. What the hell was that? So I just kicked up a rock. Like, it was a rock that like didn't bounce off my windshield. It hit the windshield and like landed on the car. So it's probably somewhere up there still. So it removes or reduces the subjectivity to be able to talk about like what it is that this engineering manager feels like is not going right. And especially if there's a bunch of these things, because again, I can't remember all the details, but it sounds like there was at least a few things where the engineering manager gave as examples, like, you know, they're doing this, here's the behavior I would expect. So like, where is that in the talent guide? Where is that in your rubric that you're using? If it doesn't exist, like, it's not, I wouldn't say that's the fault of the engineering manager, but that's an opportunity in your organization to be able to try and create something like that so that you can be more uniform across promotions and rewards for employees. Because it makes it very difficult if everyone has a different measuring stick. So if that doesn't exist, try to have some conversations about it. Even if you don't have it for your organization, let's say, it's something that you can at least put some effort into to document your expectations. You could work with your peers on this, at least to start things off. Like, I just think it's important to have written expectations and then have conversations with people about it. So in the example I was providing earlier, it was like, hey, when you're having these conversations, like, you know, kind of document that you had the conversation. But this is a bit of a step further because it's almost like a visual. There's literally a rock where my wipers are. My wipers just kicked on and like flung a rock to the other side, but it's stuck up here. So this visual indicator, if you haven't seen a rubric before, and I realize as I'm saying this, I'm sure lots of people have. Some people might not call it a rubric and they have a different word or they don't know what I'm talking about. It's literally like a table. Okay, so in the rows, every row would have sort of like some core competency that you care about for that role. And then every column would have something like the level that you're trying to write the competency for. And then every cell in that table would say, like, this is the expectation of this role at this level for this competency. So, for example, in terms of, you could talk about like a competency around like the level of business impact that's being delivered. And you could describe like the expectation at this level going to the next level is that you're having impact that looks like, and then you would describe it, right? So from mid-level to senior, it might be like you're starting to have impact that's outside of the direct team. You're starting to partner with other members of other teams. You're starting to have interactions with other stakeholders that aren't just engineers, right? Like you literally define what the expectations are in a written way, in a table format. And the really nice thing about this is that it starts to make it seem less like, oh, there was this one-off conversation we had, and it starts to paint a full picture around all of the expectations holistically. So instead of it feeling like there's a one-off situation where it's like, oh, my manager's being a jerk to me because they didn't like this thing I did, it's like, no, that's a defined expectation, and the next time something different happens, instead of you feeling like your manager's piling on you, like it happens to be another cell that you're not meeting the expectations for, and you can have a conversation around it. So I think it's a really good visual indicator. Personally, I like using rubrics like this, even to not to even structure like problem areas, but the exact opposite is like, hey, you're doing all this awesome work, and like these are the areas that I think will have the most impact for you if you continue to focus on them. Because a lot of times people are doing this stuff and it's in progress, right? They're demonstrating this stuff over time. So you can use a rubric to reinforce really positive things too. And that could be a great opportunity for this individual, right? It's like, hey, look, these things that you are doing, these are really good things. And you could list them out in the rubric and show them how that looks. And then you could say, but these other things are literally holding you back. It just so happens in this case, for this individual, they're truly things that the engineering manager is like, they're holding them back. Like these are negatives. But you could have other situations with other individuals where you're like, these things aren't negatives. Like they're not literally pulling you down. But these things are areas that I need to see more demonstration of consistency. I need to see that you are demonstrating this characteristic, this trait, this expectation. So I think rubrics are super powerful tools. I want to add some context here that I don't feel like I'm totally speaking out of my ass when I say this, because at Microsoft we have what's called a Connect, which is almost like writing a resume, like you're talking about your accomplishments. You have a conversation with your manager about it. But we also have the talent guide that I've been describing. Like it's a rubric for different levels for software engineers. And the reason I have a decent amount of confidence in what I'm talking about here is every single time I leave a conversation with employees about going through the talent guide, so this rubric, every single time people go, thank you, it was so helpful to actually have this stuff broken out in a way that I can understand. And in fact, it's pretty common that people will feel like the Connect itself, sort of this, let me talk about my accomplishments, my impact, they feel like that's less valuable for them. Don't get me wrong, it's very valuable to have it documented, but for them, the feeling that they get back from going through it, they're kind of like, whatever, it's not helpful in the moment. But the talent guide, the rubric conversation about where they need to focus, they find tremendously helpful. I want to think if I can come up with numbers. At least at Microsoft, over 20 people have told me this for feedback in 4 years. So it's not zero, it's not a million people, but that's my measure. And like what that means, like from a percentage perspective, I don't know what the percentage is, but like it's almost every single person has had positive feedback about that experience. So I'm trying to think if there's some other angles to try and provide some insight here, because I don't want to get out of the car and then this person listens to this and they're like, hey, that wasn't really helpful. I want to see if there's maybe some more actionable things. We talked about being timely, right? I think that's important. So if that's not happening, try to make sure that it is happening. Try to have something that you can refer back to, like a talent guide or previous conversations at a minimum, to be able to say, hey, we talked about this kind of focus. We talked about having conversations with other stakeholders. I think that's important. Something that you could lean into is this discussion around impact. I think there's sometimes potential gaps around that. So for example, I've worked with individuals where I already kind of talked about more senior people that happen to take on a bunch of small items. But I've had conversations with individuals where they feel that to progress, they need to be doing more things. Okay, and it's not their fault for thinking this way. I'm not blaming them, but the literal sort of response I've got from them is around like, well, am I doing enough? How do I do more? And it's kind of funny because I don't mean funny like ha at them. I mean, like, it's kind of interesting because their perception is like, well, in order for me to be better, I need to do more. And in some cases, it's just not true. It's not more. In fact, maybe less. Maybe less. Maybe it's less, but higher quality. Higher quality, more consistency, fewer bugs, better communication, better consistency. Like, there's just better quality around what they're doing instead of more things. And on that, it's not just the quality. Again, I don't know the exact circumstances for this individual, but if their time and effort is spent on smaller things that aren't as important from a business impact perspective, like, it's really important to try and explain that, right? It's not just about volume of work, because that's the positive reinforcement they're getting otherwise. It's not just about more things. You can flip this around and say, hey, like, as someone who is more senior on the team, like, my expectation of you is that you're working on these higher impact things. I know that there's a lot of smaller things that need to get done, but hey, you know how we have Billy and Sally on the team? They're a little bit more junior. Like, we should actually be having conversations about how to get them working on this stuff, because this could be really good work for them. You could actually help them grow in their role by helping them navigate some of these different work streams, because we know you know how to do it, and we know that you can do it effectively. But giving them this opportunity is actually an opportunity for you twofold. One is that you get to help them and like kind of provide some mentorship. And two is like, it frees up your time from carrying out that work directly. And now you can go focus on some bigger impact areas. So that can be something to think about. In the back of my head, I have this bad feeling that like the setup for this manager that I described about being like a floating manager, I just have a really bad feeling that that's like going to make it difficult for some of these conversations. And I say that because I'm trying to put myself in their shoes and think about if I haven't had an opportunity to really feel like I've built a good relationship, it's going to make me feel like I want to like, tiptoe around things. So I don't know how comfortable this individual is. I don't know if they have a really good working relationship with this engineer. My assumption is probably not. Probably feels like the working relationship is maybe tense. Maybe it's not tense. Maybe it's kind of like distant. And then how do you get people bought into feeling like, you're looking out for their best interest versus just being an ass, right? Like, it's going to be hard. So that's in the back of my head. So maybe the final piece of advice I have for this person is like, given your setup as a manager, I don't know how much time you're spending building relationships with people, but I feel like you need to work extra hard at building those relationships. It's already a difficult thing to do. It takes time. It takes consistency, demonstrating to people that you care about their interests, that you're looking out for them. There's a lot that goes into it, and I feel like if there's a bit of a rotation here or a floating management kind of role, you're going to have to work harder at that, unfortunately. So I'll wrap that up there. I hope that was helpful. By all means, this video is coming, so because we've talked about it. If you feel like I missed the mark, or you have other thoughts, like maybe what I said wasn't clear, or I missed some context, anything like that, hopefully like I'm happy to kind of talk about different details on this. So yeah, I say the same thing on live streams, right? When people ask me questions, I'm like, I'll try to answer what I think I know that you're asking about. And if it's helpful, great. If it's not, let me know, right? Like, I'm not, my goal is to be helpful. And if I'm missing it, just let me know and I'll try a different way. This kind of stuff's hard. If you're not a manager and you're listening to this, like, I hope that you don't hear it and feel resentful. I hope you don't hear it and you're thinking like, look at these managers talking about this kind of stuff, like thinking they're just controlling everything. Like, I don't know. It's just not just not the reality. Maybe for some managers, but like, I hope it's not a feeling of like resentment or, feeling like we're trying to control things. Like, any good manager that I've talked to, I absolutely feel like they want the best for their employees. So if it's not coming across that way, either you have a bad manager or there's a misunderstanding. And based on what I know about people interactions, I feel like misunderstandings happen a lot. So I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say, like, please try to assume best intentions. Like, I'm not making excuses for bad managers, but sometimes people are trying to do the right thing and it feels like friction, but they're just trying to help. So try to keep an open mind, I guess, if your manager's giving you some direction in some way. Hopefully you're in a spot where you can comfortably assume, like, hey, look, I know based on our interactions, my manager wants the best for me. And honestly, if you're in an environment where you don't feel that way and you don't feel like you're supported, even if you've had conversations about it, like, I don't know. I'm of the mindset where if I try to make positive change and I'm not supported by my manager, or I feel like the environment is not conducive to it, it's time to go, right? You can have the best intentions and there's only so much time and effort you can put into something before you're like, I got to be in a different spot. So, something to think about. I'm trying to turn and there's an infinite stream of traffic. And a bus. Yeah, okay. So I'll probably, what's today, Wednesday? I gotta go to CrossFit this week. I haven't been to CrossFit yet, man. When I was on vacation, I was like, so for context, I realized I'm sitting in a car, and otherwise, if you're watching my other YouTube videos, you see a talking head. One of my hobbies has been bodybuilding for a long time, and I kind of, I'm not like a professional by any means, but I've been on a stage before. I withdrew from a competition, from 2 competitions earlier this year. So, fitness, bodybuilding, nutrition, like it's all a hobby and like a lifestyle interest for me. And when I was on vacation, so I withdrew from bodybuilding the day after Valentine's Day because I felt like I was not being a good partner to my wife, and I think that was the right decision. I have absolutely no regrets there. And so it's been since February, mid-February, and it's November now, so like almost like 8.5 months kind of thing, if my math is right, maybe. And like when I was in Hawaii, I was back to the point where I'm like, I don't want to take off my shirt. Like, I felt that uncomfortable in my own body. this is obviously like a body dysmorphia kind of thing. Like I would wager that probably every single person who's into bodybuilding has some level of body dysmorphia, whether or not they admit it to themselves. But yeah, this is like a bit of a wake up call for me, where I was like, okay, like I've been I've been coasting a little bit too long. I have all the tools, the experience to not feel like I'm too fat, and right now I feel like I'm too fat. So it's hard because I'm going to the gym less consciously because I'm trying to make time for other things. But I also need to make sure like I'm not just totally not going. So got to get to CrossFit this week. And I've been trying to use my walking pad since I've got home. So try to cut like 10 to 15 pounds over the next, I'm in no rush to do it, but over the next little bit. It's probably going to take me a few months if I'm just like slowly chipping away. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because, man, I just remember seeing myself in the mirror. I was like, okay, I had could feel like my belly hanging over my shorts, and I'm like, nope, like we're not okay with that. Especially because it's not like I'm way stronger. I'm like weaker and fatter, so it's a dangerous combination. But anyway, that's my fat update. So yeah, that's that. I'll see. I'll probably get a couple trips to CrossFit and get maybe 2 more videos this week, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's the update. I'll see you later.